I'm guessing since you're here, you already have a solid understanding of the nervous system. But here's the real question. Do you know how to self-regulate? Mastering self-regulation isn't just about acquiring a bunch of knowledge. It's about actually having practical tools that you can use to work with your stress responses. In case you're wondering who I am, my name is Wendy, and I help creatives and entrepreneurs harness the power of science and the woo to empower themselves to create a life that they love. Today, I'm going to be talking about 5 ways to self-regulate. This is not going to be a deep, entailed description of the nervous system. You can always get in my trauma-informed certification if you want to learn more about that in depth. Basically, the nervous system is your automatic response to stress and activities that happen. It is a protective mechanism that we all have. It's your body's way of reacting to every stimulus, from minor annoyances to major challenges. And as I said, it's a survival mechanism. So these responses are deeply rooted in our evolutionary past, and they're designed to keep us safe. I will talk about the 4 stress responses. You might have heard of flight or fight. Those are 2 of them, but really there are actually 4. And I want to let everyone know too, as we're talking about, everything's going to be very individual. Every single experience you've had has created your own specific patterns. So there are like general themes and general behaviors and general ways in which, people react, but everything's going to be so unique. So even as I'm going through this explanation and giving you some of these ways that I have seen my clients benefit from and in different responses, just know that they may or may not work for you, and you're going to be a unique individual. But if you do try them and keep trying things, you will find solutions that do work for yourself. When we talk about self-regulation, we're really talking about being dysregulated. All of us pretty much live in a society that is full of tons of stress and things that are on our mind, and this leaves us exhausted. It often has us lacking focus. We have anxiety, feeling disconnection. These are all normal. This is your body's natural response to a stressful environment. There is nothing wrong with you if you experience this. It is a way for your body to signal to you that things in your environment should be changed. So if you do find yourself feeling very exhausted, feeling out of focus, having tons of anxiety, feeling disconnected, just working just the way it was designed to, and there is nothing wrong with you. So part of the explanation that I like to use is talking about polyvagal theory. Once again, this is not an in-depth video going into all of these things, but at the end of the day, there's, some basic states. Most people that you hear talking about regulating your nervous system will talk about these things. So you may have heard these terms. I have a little bit specific way I explain them. So I'm going to go through that real quick. From what all the research that I have come across and my years of research and education and learning now, I kind of put these into 2 different categories. We have the biological actions, meaning what is happening in your body, your nervous system, your neurochemistry, your all of the parts, how they are working together. That is the biological actions. And then you have behavioral responses. So sometimes when you hear people talking about these things, they're mixing biological actions and behavioral responses. I try to make this really clear. So as you are watching this and I'm using a term, I want to explain it right now a little bit so you will understand why I suggest the 5 different activities that I do. So in polyvagal theory, there's an understanding that when we are in a calm state, it's called ventral vagal state. This is when we're calm, we're connected, we're interacting. You might have heard this called like rest and digest. Basically, this is what's happening when you're not stressed. You're either stressed or you're not stressed. When you're not stressed, you should be in this ventral vagal state. However, if you're stressed, there's other things that happen once you're stressed. So the first thing that happens is your system gets activated to let you know that you're stressed. And this is what we know of the flight or fight response. You might have heard it being called sympathetic response. This is the same thing. This is your body wanting to take action to handle the stress. And so the fight or flight, as I said, are a part of this. Now, you may have heard fight or flight, but really the order in which it goes is flight response. When you're in flight response, you actually are trying to make a plan of action to get yourself out of danger, because actually engaging straight on with that danger will take more energy. And our body is always trying to conserve energy because we never know when we're going to get food again or when the next stressful thing is going to happen. So our body is constantly always trying to conserve energy and will always try to use the least energy resource intensive path of action. And so flight is actually the first one, which would actually have you get away from the stress. And one of the things that's cool about the biology here is when you're in the flight response, in that first level of the stress response, there's actually still a connection to what's called your prefrontal cortex. So you can do things like use logic and maybe recall some memories and some different things of your past in order to make a plan of action. But if you do not have enough energetic resources or enough dopamine, if you're like me and have ADHD, then oftentimes it's very difficult to be in that flight stress energy, and you will move into what's called fight energy. This is exactly what it sounds like. It's fight, it's active, it's moving. However, most of us do not have very good practices in working with this fight energy. And so it becomes even more stressful just feeling this fight energy, and we use more of our energetic resources and we move into what's called the freeze response. And what is happening biologically here, you kind of think of it as when you're stressed, your brain is putting gas on the gas pedal and putting all the things in motion so you can take action. But then as your energy starts to, not be so available, it's going to put the brakes on a little bit. And when you're in this both kind of gas and brake, you're in what's called the freeze response. So this is a biological action. It's both sympathetic and parasympathetic. So sympathetic is basically gas pedal, take action. Parasympathetic is stop. So you've got both. And if you've ever drove a car, if you try to drive a car with your gas and your brake pedal, you're not really going to get anywhere, right? So you're frozen and you're stuck. And that is what a lot of people kind of get into. And because our stress is there, but we really do have to keep taking action. We kind of get really practice at this thing called functional freeze, where we're able to go about our life, but we're really, really stressed out all the time. But we're managing to function somehow, some way with all of the stresses of our life. That's functional freeze. But if that stress continues, which most of it does, we will move into what's called flop. Once again, a biological action. In Polyvagal Theory, they call this the dorsal vagal state, and it's really a dissociation. And you start doing things like, doom scrolling and, binging on Netflix or playing video games or any of the myriad of activities that people do to completely dissociate from the stress that's in their life. And as I said, we're all individuals, so you will go through all of these things at different times. One person may have a propensity towards functional freeze, and another person may have a tendency to hang out and fight. There's nothing wrong with this. Once again, this is just your body's natural way of dealing with stress in using whatever tools that you have. With that being said, there's all this talk about nervous system regulation. And I will say the absolute fastest way to regulate your nervous system is to be with someone who has a regulated nervous system. But if your life is like mine, you're not really surrounded by a bunch of people who've got regulated nervous systems. In fact, I have a mom and I have kids, and most of the time they're dysregulated and I'm having to regulate myself so they can become regulated. And that's called self-regulation, where we're unable to have outside resources in order to help us regulate. So in order to do this, you're going to have to be aware of kind of what's happening with your body, and you're going to have to learn how to adjust once you're aware of what's happening. And the way you do this, it's called resilience. You do it by practicing. So this is why I have these 5 ways of doing this in this video later on, just a few moments, is because you can practice these things. So that way, when you are stressed, you'll be able to rely on these practice behaviors. Now that's a really important part. Remember I said at the beginning, if you're in flight, you can engage in some of that logical thinking and kind of pull on some of your memories and your, maybe that YouTube video that you watched that gave you great resources. You can do that in flight. But once you move into fight, freeze, or flop, you do not have that same connection to the front part of your brain. And so the only thing that you really can rely on are practice behaviors. And so you're going to want to practice all of these things that I am talking about and see which ones work for you. And if you're like most people, you'll find that sometimes they work well in certain situations and some of them don't. And that's because they're really, I'm giving you 5, one that kind of works across the board, one that works specifically for flight, one for fight, one for freeze, and one for flop. And so you may think you're in one kind of stress response, trying to do an action or a behavior that will help alleviate that stress. But if you're doing the wrong kind of behavior for that biological action, you can actually increase your stress. So that is why I wanted to give you some of these that are really kind of tied to all of them. And then one general one that, when in doubt, you can always use it. It will always help you get more centered. All right, start small. These are all simple techniques, and personalize your approach. I'm going to give you like suggestions, but take it and run with it. Do what makes you feel good. And always remember that the quickest way to get regulated, if you are dysregulated, is to get support. If you have someone in your life you can call, that's great, but a lot of times we don't. So there are all kinds of different hotlines that you can call for whatever issue you're having. They will help you. Just being on the phone will help you regulate, so that way things do not feel so overwhelming to yourself. However, if that's not available, or maybe you feel like you can handle this on your own, maybe you've been practicing these techniques I'm about to talk about, then you'll want to rely on some of those techniques. So what are they? The first one I call it safe and supported, because this is basically the action you're going to do. You're going to want to put your hands over your heart and remind yourself that you're safe. Take a couple breaths in, say I'm safe, and then throw your hands back wide and say, I'm supported. Kind of think of like a bird flying on the wind and how the wind is supporting them. This is actually all tied to biology. There are reasons why I use this one, but it is one of the most simple actions you can do to help actually get your body into nervous system regulation. And it doesn't matter which of the responses you're in. If you do this one, it will help. Now, you have to remember, you have to practice it in order for you to be able to do it when you're really stressed, because you won't have that connection to your brain to remember. So I recommend practicing this whenever you can. Now, sometimes we can't throw our hands wide, and sometimes we don't even feel comfortable putting our hands over our heart when we're in those stressed environments. But if you practice this and you kind of feel that sensation, so like right now, if it's safe and available to you, I invite you to put your hands over your heart. Take a couple breaths in and kind of notice what that feels like when you say, I'm safe. And then when you say, I'm supported, notice what that feels like. And if you can, imagine the back of your heart having like hands like holding it and feeling like you're supported. You can feel kind of what that is like in your body. And then when you're in those times of feeling stressed, you can kind of rely back on that memory of what it felt like to feel safe and supported when you were practicing that. And then for the next one, that's going to be flight. I call this one more breath. You might have heard all kinds of different breathing exercises, and they're great for certain situations, but you have to know which kind of energy you're in. Now, doing breath work in general will help you if you're able to, and if you're practice, it will kind of shift your biological actions, the stress response right then, because you're bringing attention to what's happening with you. So by doing that, you're already starting to shift your stress response. So this one is a great one if you are stressed, you're kind of taking work, but you can kind of feel like maybe more anxiety building up, maybe starting to feel anxious, like you really want to move, and maybe you're fidgety, you're sitting at your desk, maybe you're in a meeting, on a Zoom meeting, and you can't really say anything. This is a time you can do this kind of pretty much anywhere. I do it while I'm driving. I do it while I'm waiting in line. There are all kinds of places where you can do this. You take a breath in and you count. So whatever your count is what it is. It's going to be really short right now because I've been talking and I am not in a completely calm, regulated state. And so I've got some more energy going right now, which is good. I want to be energized because I am actually excited to be delivering this information. So do not judge yourself on however big your count is. So you're going to go in, 2, 3, 7. I got 7. So now I'm going to try to, now normally you don't hold right there, but if you can hold one breath and then you breathe out for 8. So you just add on one number for the count. So if you breathe in for 5, you're going to want to breathe out for 6. If you breathe in for 9, you're going to want to breathe out for 10. Just adding that one extra breath is going to help kind of put the brakes on. So remember, we were talking about we're in the sympathetic with the gases going. We're going to want to try to put the brakes on a little bit by adding in that extra breath. Now, I love some of those other box counts and 4, 7, 8 and these different breathing techniques. They're great for what they're good for. But if you do not know your body and how to breathe and what works in different situations, this one will pretty much always work. And because it's just one extra breath, so it's not going to stress out your body too much, but it's going to help kind of bring down that really kind of energetic. So this is really when you feel like fidgety, this is the exercise to do. Now, fight. This is a lot of times people don't know they're in the fight energy until they're mad. And there's a reason why it's called fight energy. But it starts to show up when you feel frustration or resentment. Maybe you're sitting in the Zoom meeting and you don't want to be sitting there. You want to be out playing or doing something or exploring or working on a project that you love instead of a project that you hate. Whatever the situation is, there's going to be different reasons why you're going to feel some frustration in your life and some resentment. Maybe there's things going on in the world that really frustrate you, that you feel resentment towards people. Maybe it's your relationships, whatever it is. But a lot of times we are so used to just shoving those feelings down that we do not notice them until they boil over. So if you are feeling stressed and you kind of know you've still got this like movement going, but you're not really in a way where you want to kind of make a plan of action, you're just agitated, maybe frustrated, right? If you hear those words kind of going through your head when you're trying to identify, you know this is fight energy. And so the best way to do this is to express yourself some way, how. Now, ideally, you'd be able to use your voice and yell or cry or scream or whatever it is that would make you feel good. But like most of the time, at least for me, I'm not able to actually express myself the way I want to be able to express myself in that moment. So there are other things that you can do. You can journal. Not everyone likes to journal, but if you do, journaling is a great way. You can doodle, just like draw whatever you want on a piece of paper. Like even if it's just like anything, like anytime you can create something, you're expressing yourself. So whether it's just, you're cooking and you're throwing a bunch of ingredients into a pot and seeing what comes up, that's creating, that's expressing yourself. Dancing, movement, these are all ways to express yourself. So that fight energy gets bottled up when we're unable to express yourself. So anytime you feel that fight energy, find a safe way to express yourself. It will help bring that down, help you maybe move into flight so you can make a plan of action. And then that takes us to freeze. So maybe you're in functional freeze. Maybe you feel stuck. You feel overwhelmed. You have no way of figuring out what you need to do, what actions you need to take. You just, kind of want to go run and hide, but at the same time, you're still facing what is the challenge in front of you. That is one of the key factors to know that you're in freeze, is that you're actually able to see what the problem is. And so you're still looking at it, but you don't know what to do about it. That is freeze response. And so the big thing, this is the one you've got the gas and the brake. What you really want to try to do is kind of remove that brake pedal. So you're going to try to engage in things that are going to actually be in that sympathetic. You're going to want to start taking little actions. My suggestion always is to get up, go take a break of some sort, whether it's going to the bathroom, getting a glass of water, take a quick walk around the block, going to check your mail. Anytime you're getting up with intentional action, where you're being aware of the fact that you have this feeling in your body, and now you're going to go move that feeling, that kind of move because you feel stuck. That is the difference. That's part of the difference. If you just get up and start doing something mindlessly and you're not still being aware of the sensations in your body, you might actually be moving into flop energy, where flop is, as I said, it's mostly that dorsal vagal response or that brake pedal. But, we're alive. We're still moving. We're still breathing. We're still doing things. So most of the time, what flop actually looks like for people is that dissociating, where you're not facing the stress anymore. You're completely dissociated from it. You're blocking it out, la, 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 doing whatever you need to do so you don't think about it and you don't focus on it. That's the difference between freeze and flop. And so one of the things, if you do notice that you are in flop, is just try to connect back into your body, because that's what's happening is you're dissociating. Your mind's up here and your body's down here, and they are not connected. One of the quickest, easiest ways to get back into your body, regardless of which of these stress responses you're in, but specifically when you're in flop, is to look down at your feet and notice them. Are they hot? Are they cold? What's going on with your feet? As I said, this is about biology. It's all tied to biology. I could get deeper into it, but that's not the purpose of this. But anytime you look down at your feet and notice, are they hot or cold? It's one of the quickest ways to bring someone back into their body. So I always recommend doing that. And then if you can, start noticing any kinds of sensations. You might have heard of the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 before, where you say, what are 5 things that I see? What are 4 things that I hear? What are 3 things that I smell? What are 2 things that I taste? Like trying to bring in your senses. And you don't have to do them in that order. Those were just the ones that came to me in the order that they came in. You can do any order, but just kind of notice what things are coming up. Where's red in the room? Where's blue in the room? Trying to find something to engage your senses is actually going to bring you back into your body, which is what you want to do when you're in flop. All right. So if you just do not know where to start with any of this, once again, go back to that safe and supported. And if you're still trying the safe and supported and it's not working, look down at your feet, notice that they're hot or cold, and then go to the safe, I'm supported. Also wanted to mention with the safe and supported, sometimes you can't throw your arms back. So maybe you can just put your shoulders back, like stand a little taller to remind yourself that you are supported. When you are in this guarded position, you're sending a signal that you need to be guarded and that you're not safe. Once you kind of straighten your posture, it sends signals to your brain and reminds you that you actually are safe. And if you can throw in that extra part of being supported, if you feel less lonely, and if you can pay attention to your feet, whether they're hot or cold, which at this moment, my feet are cold, so I'm going to go in just a second, then you will actually be able to engage more for your body. Your breathing will start to regulate more. And hopefully, you'll just find more presence in being where you are and more comfortable with the sensations that are going in your body. Now, none of these are magic bullets. It doesn't mean that once you get really practiced at this, all your stress goes away. It just means that now you can handle it a little bit more. And if you want to know more about me, feel free to like, subscribe, follow, all those good things. And I hope you enjoyed this. Leave a comment below if there is something that you would like to share or add, or any reflections that you found in this video. All right, bye.